We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast. This is Abe, your host. Flying solo right now. You will not be hearing this until it's a week late. Sorry. I just got a strike from YouTube. So I'm grounded for a week. So when you hear this, it's a week late. This is actually November the 7th, 9 a.m., so it's crazy, man. I guess the first warning was just a warning on my Ellen DeGeneres video, and then now I got an actual strike, so I did confuse a strike and a warning. So now technically is my first strike with the adrenochrome video, which by the time you hear this will no longer be on YouTube. It is on Spotify though. It's on, we go through Anchor, so let me get my cheat sheet out. You can find the adrenochrome episode. It's on Spotify, on Google Podcast, it's on Breaker and Radio Public, which is one of our newest places we're able to be found. So I'm on technically strike one. You get 3 strikes and you're out, pretty much like the American pastime baseball. Which sucks because I've actually been like coming up with some ideas and shit. Like my artwork, I figured I would actually like take pictures of each cover art for each episode, reprint them into prints so that way I could sell it at the local art festival for like $1 a piece. And I was actually thinking about selling the originals as flyers, man. Not selling them, but handing them out as flyers to get the channel going. So like every time I get like a little umph in me to get this shit going, I get set back with a strike from YouTube. And YouTube is the only one I'm having trouble with. None of these other platforms are fucking with me. So it's kind of fucking aggravating. Because sadly, all my listeners are on YouTube. I mean, I'm getting views and listens from other platforms through Anchor, but I don't know. I mean, if I get one more strike, I'm going to have to come up with a second channel. Which, if I do, the second channel will be called Conspiracy Corner Podcast. It's no longer going to be called Abe Williams. When I get strike 2, I'm going to put out one last video on Abe Williams' account. And I'm going to literally start a new YouTube channel. So if you really like our content, you're going to have to switch over to the new one because that will be my last video. What? Alright. So yeah, that's a little heads up on how I feel right now. A little irritated. Anytime you start putting out too much truth, they start shutting you down. You know? And honestly, it makes me discouraged, but at the same time, it's like, well, it lets me know that I'm doing my job. If the elite are shutting me down, it lets me know that I'm saying something that is fucking fire under their ass. So, but yeah, that's about it. Just working my ass off 6 days a week as usual. You know, I sound like a broken record. We had a good little fun trip to Louisville. We went and seen the Witch's Tree. So check out that video if you want. I have a taste test video that I would like to film and put out, but I'm on week grounding. I'm grounded, so I'm actually just gonna backlog shit, I guess, and then post it all on one day. Just be like, bam, 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 here you go, enjoy. But yeah, that's what's going on. I mean, I'm not gonna give up, you know. I do have to say, like, if you do, I don't know. I'm thinking too far into the future. I got one more strike in me against this channel, my main channel. And then I'm going to start a new channel. So, it's a little aggravating because it's like I've been on here for 3 years and I'm just now getting up to 178 subscribers. So, 3 years it took me to get there. And I'm going to have to start from square one. So, that's a little aggravating. But, I don't know. Let's take our mind off the bad news and just let's get into something simple and fun. We did a torture device episode on the Bilbos. So if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. But we're going to do another one. This one's on the ducking stool. So I will put a picture of the ducking stool, the actual torture device, and then obviously the title page. But we'll get into this. This is taken from, I mentioned it on the other torture device episode, but I'll mention it again. This is taken from Curious Punishments of Bygone Days. It's a old, basically a pamphlet written, I think it was, let's see, 1896. So the English is old, but it actually kind of makes it more fun to read. And for me, this is two birds, one stone, because I actually get to read this book for the first time. And each chapter is a different torture device, so I get to read it for the first time, and I haven't been reading like I should be reading, because I've been so busy with my main job, you know. But also, you know, we get to kind of do it in a podcast form, so I might read a paragraph or two and say some stuff, or you know, it's kind of like an audio book but relaxed. I can you know, do it in a podcast form instead. But I also get to catch up on my reading, which I should have been doing for probably the past 2 years probably. Alright, this is the ducking stool. The ducking stool seems to have been placed on the lowest and most contempt-bearing stage among English instruments of punishment. The pillory and stocks, the gibbet, and even the whipping post have seen many a noble victim, many a martyr. But I cannot think any save the most ignoble criminals ever sat in a ducking stool. In all the degrading and cruel indignities offered, the many political and religious offenders in England under the varying rules of both church and state, through the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries, the ducking stool played no part and secured no victims. It was an engine of punishment, specially assigned to scolding women, though sometimes kindred offenders, such as slanderers, makebaits, chiders, brawlers, railers, and women of light carriage also suffraged through it. Through gruff, old Sam Johnson said to a gentle Quaker lady, Quaker, by the way, Quaker Oats, that's actually kind of like a cult, kind of like the Shakers or Mennonites, Amish. Madam, we have different modes of restraining evil. Stocks for men, a ducking stool for women, and a pound for beast. Sorry. Freudian slip. Yet men as well as women scolds were punished by being set in the ducking stool, and quarrelsome married couples were ducked, tied back to back. The last person set in the rugby ducking stool was a brutal husband who had beaten his wife. Brewers of bad beer and bakers of bad bread were deemed of sufficiently degraded ethical standing to be ducked. Hey, kitty, chill out, man. Wow, so you could be punished for brewing bad beer or baking bad bread. I mean, I get it if it's like, kitty, I'm sorry, man. We have a co-host in the house, I guess. Kitty! Alright. Technical difficulties, man. Trying to film an episode here. But yeah, that's how strict they were back then, that you could be punished for like brewing bad beer or baking bad bread. I mean, I could see if they could prove that it was intentional, but even then, like, to just hook someone up to a torture device, that's wicked shit, man. And people around here bitch about stuff, and it's like, I don't know, the further back you go, I think times are getting better rather than worse, Just saying. I could be an optimist, though. The intelligent French traveler Masson, who visited England about the year 1700 and who left in his story of his travels so much valuable and interesting information of the England of that day, gives this lucid description of a ducking stool. The way of punishing scolding women is pleasant enough. They fasten an armchair to each of the two beams, 12 or 15 foot long, and parallel to each other, so that these two pieces with their two ends embrace the chair, which hangs between them by a sort of axle, by which means it plays freely, and also remains in the natural horizontal position in which a chair should be, that a person may sit conveniently in it. Whether you raise it or let it down, they set up a post on the bank of a pond or a river, and over the post they lay, almost an equilibrio, the two pieces of wood, at one end of which the chair hangs just over the water. They place the woman in this chair, and so plunge her into the water as often as the sentence directs, in order to cool her in moderate heat. The adjectives pleasant and convenient as applied to a ducking stool would scarcely have entered the mind of any one but a Frenchman. Still the chair itself was sometimes rudely ornamented. The Cambridge stool was carved with devils laying hold of scolds. Others were painted with appropriate devices such as a man and woman scolding. Two Plymouth ducking stools, still preserved, are of wrought iron and good design. The Sandwich ducking stool bore the motto, "Of members ye tongue is worst or best, and ye'll tongue off doth breed unrest." We read in Blackstone's commentaries, "A common scold may be indicted, and if convicted shall be sentenced to be placed in a certain engine of correction, called the trebuchet, castigory, or ducking stool. The trebuchet, or trebuchet okay, so that they're given the French. The trebuchet or the trebuchet was a stationary and simple form of a docking machine consisting of a short post set at the water's edge with a long beam resting on it like a seesaw. By the way, I find it funny that there's like dunking, they call them dunking stools, but it's essentially the same thing that you see at like fairgrounds and stuff, where you throw the baseball at the target, and once it hits the target, the guy falls into the water. But obviously that's fun and games and it only happens once. But this is like a torture device that would literally, I'm guessing, probably go on for days perhaps. But I just find it kind of funny. By a simple contrivance, it could be swung round parallel to the bank, and the culprit tied and the chair fixed to one end. Then she could be swung out over the water, and seesawed up and down into the water. When the machine was not in use, it was secured to a stump or bolt in the ground by a padlock, because when left free it proved too tempting and convenient an opportunity for tormenting village children to duck each other. So the kids, they had to lock the machine down because the kids would be like trying it out pretty much, acting like little hoodlums, you know. And I ain't gonna lie, like going into my background, my past, which I haven't really spoke too much about on this channel, like I could so see me and a bunch of different skater kids, you know, in the neighborhood, like, dude, a ducking stool, let's hook each other up, you know. A tumbrel, or scold's cart, was a chair set on wheels and having very long wagon shafts with a rope attached to them about 2 feet from the end. When used, it was wheeled into a pond backward. The long shafts were suddenly tilted up, and the scold sent down, and the backward plunge into the water. So almost like waterboarding. So this is like a precursor to like waterboarding, which, you know, if you remember all the outrage back during the Bush administration, we were doing waterboarding to like Guantanamo Bay, quote unquote, potential terrorist, which gets into pre-crime, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole, and how it gets into people confessing when tortured for hours upon hours without actually committing the crime. But if you torture someone long enough, they will confess to something they didn't do. Just saying. The tumbrel was drawn out of the water by the ropes. Colin's son, by the way, Colin's son, Colin, the root Collins came to this beautiful Atlantean Masonic experiment we call the United States of America. Collins is one of the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati. That's where you get the whole Collins vampire shit with the Twilight series and stuff like that. All it is predictive programming. Collins, though, Collins and Todd are two 13 bloodline families of the Illuminati. There's actually a John Todd Collins who was a whistleblower talking about that. I mean, it goes deep, man. It goes deep. Rabbit holes never end. Todd, too, was married to Lincoln. Lincoln was actually Rothschild bloodline. Todd was Illuminati 13 bloodlines along with Rothschild, or pretty much Illuminati marrying Illuminati. Like, even Lincoln was Illuminati. Same with JFK. I know I start the episode with JFK and I end the episode with JFK as far as the theme song, but they're all kind of Illuminati. I just find it funny, though, that JFK and Lincoln both caught a bullet, so I think that they were trying to break free from that Saturn system, aka Satan system, whatever word makes you feel warm and fuzzy, I guess, when diagnosing the parasite that is the parasite, that's in this world, this octopus that controls everything. I don't know. All right, so the Collinson. Collinson says, oh yeah. So Collins, where it's Irish, Collins' son would be the son of Collins. So, like with the Irish, you see like Williams, and you might meet a Williams son. You're probably both from the same damn clan. They just got tired of saying, like, with Irish at least, like there's Mick, which means, like, say my father, his last name was Williams, I would be Mick Williams, or Williams' son. But you can't sit there and that doesn't continue throughout the generations because it's like you can't be like William's son, William's son, William's son. All it means is it's the son of that person before you, you know. This is back when people lived one day at a time and didn't think that they would survive their bloodline, thousands of generations, if not hundreds, But Collinson says in his history of Somersetshire, written in 1791 in Shipton Mallet, was anciently set up a tumbrel for the correction of unquiet women. So just for speaking too much, women, you could be set in the ducking stool. Other names for a like engine were gumstool and cockqueen stool. Many and manifold are the allusions to the ducking stool in English literature. In a volume called Miscellaneous Poems, written by Benjamin West and published in 1780, is a descriptive poem entitled The Ducking Stool, which runs thus. There stands, my friend, in yonder pool, an engine called the ducking stool, by legal power commanded down, the joy and terror of the town. If jarring females kindle strife, given language foul or lug, the coif. If noisy dames should once begin to drive the house with horrid din, away, you cried, you'll grace the stool, we'll teach you how your tongue to rule. The fair offender fills the seat, in sullen pomp profoundly great. Down in the deep the stool descends, but here at first we miss our ends. She mounts again and rages more than ever vixen did before. So throwing water on the fire will make it burn up the higher. If so, my friend, pray let her take a second turn into the lake, and rather than your patience lose, thrice again repeat the dose. No brawling wives, no furious wenches, no fire so hot but water quenches. In Scotland, flighting queens sat in ignominy in cucking stools. Bessie Spence was admonished. Anytime you see cucking, that's not good. Gifts she found flighting with another neighbor, man or wife, and specifically gains Jonette Arthe. She shall be put on the cuck stool and sit there for 24 hours. A worthless fellow, Sandehay, for troublance made upon Andrew Watson, is discernant for his demerits to be put in cuckstool, there to remain till 4 hours after noon. The length of time of punishment, usually 24 hours, would plainly show there was no attendant ducking, and this cuckstool or cucking stool must not be confounded with the ducking stool, which dates to the days of Edward the Confessor. The cuck stool was simply a strong chair in which an offender was fastened, thus to be hooted at and pelted at by the mob. Sometimes, when placed on a tumbrel, it was used for ducking. So essentially the same, but not the same. The cucking was simply just to be yelled at and to be cucked. By the way, if you go back to the furthest origin of cucking, Shakespeare created it. So that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day on Sir Francis Bacon, the King James Bible, and that whole conspiracy. I've talked about it before. You can check out the channel. I think it's Shakespeare and the Bible, I think the title of the video is, so check it out on the channel. Let's see, at the time of the colonization of America, the ducking stool was at the height of its English reign, and apparently the amiability of lower classes was equally at ebb. The colonists brought their tempers to the new land, and they brought their ducking stools. Many minor and some great historians of this country have called the ducking stool a Puritan punishment. I have never found in the hundreds of pages of court records that I have ever examined a single entry of an execution of a ducking stool in any Puritan community. While in the Cavalier colonies, so-called, in Virginia, in the Carolinas, and in Quaker Pennsylvania, many ducking stools took place. So it sounds more like a Quaker thing rather than Puritan. And in law survived as long as similar punishments in England. In the statute books of Virginia from Dale's time onward, many laws may be found designed to silence idle tongues by ducking. One reads, "Whereas oftentimes many brabbling women often slander and scandalize their neighbors, for which their poor husbands are often brought into chargeable and vexatious suits, and casting great damages, be it enacted that all women found guilty by sentence to ducking." Alright, I do have to say this, just from my experience. Women do like to gossip, but I don't think we should strap them to a ducking stool, though. I don't know. Call me progressive, I guess, or liberal. Others dated 1662 are more explicit. The court in every county shall cause to be set up near a courthouse, a pillory, a pair of stocks, a whipping post, and a ducking stool in such a place as they think convenient, which not being set up within 6 months after the date of this act, the said court shall be fined 5,000 pounds of tobacco. In actions of slander caused by a man's wife after judgment passed for damages, the woman shall be punished by ducking. And if the slander be such as the damages shall be adjudged above 500 pounds of tobacco, then the woman shall be ducking for every 500 pounds, so 500 times, of tobacco adjudged against the husband if he refused to pay the tobacco. The fee of a sheriff or constable for ducking was 20 pounds of tobacco. I don't know, maybe I'm doing my math wrong. I suck at math. The American Historical Record, Volume 1, gives a letter said to have been written to Governor Endicott of Massachusetts in 1634 by one Thomas Hartley from Hungers Parish, Virginia. It gives a graphic description of a ducking stool and an account of a ducking in Virginia. I quote from it. "The day before yesterday, at 2 of ye clock in ye afternoon, I saw this punishment given to one Betsy, wife of John Tucker, who by ye violence of her tongue has made his house in ye neighborhood uncomfortable. She was taken to ye pond near where I am sojourning by ye officer, who was joined by ye magistrate and ye minister, Mr. Cotton, who have frequently admonished her and a number of people. They had a machine for ye purpose yet belongs to ye parish, and which I was told and been so used 3 times this summer. Or it had been used 3 times this summer. It is a platform with 4 small rollers or wheels and 2 upright posts, between which works a lever by a rope fastened to its shorter or heavier end. At ye end of ye longer arm is fixed a stool, upon which said Betsy was fastened by cords, her gown tied fast around her feet. The machine was then moved up to ye edge of ye pond. Ye rope was slackened by ye officer, and ye woman was allowed to go down under ye water for ye space of half a minute. Betsy had a stout stomach, and would not yield until she had allowed herself to be ducked 5 several times. So it's just waterboarding, but like full submergence, basically. At length she cried piteously, let me go, by God's help, I'll sin no more. Then they drew back ye machine, untied ye ropes, and let her walk home in her wetted clothes, a hopefully penitent woman. Bishop Meade and his old church's ministers and families of Virginia tell of scolding Queen, who was ordered to be ducked 3 times from the yard of a vessel lying in James River. A woman in Northampton County, Virginia, suffered a peculiarly degrading punishment for slander. In the lack of a ducking stool, she was drawn over the King's Creek at the starn of Bote in canoe. Also, the next Sabbath day, in the time of Dewey and Cereus, this is getting into weird language. What up? Was obliged to present herself before the minister and congregation and acknowledge her fault and beg forgiveness. From the decisions of Virginia General Court now being printed in Virginia Historical Society. By the way, those historical societies are a bunch of wanker groups. I know half the people in the Harrodsburg Historical Society, and they're a bunch of fucking Illuminati scumbags, honestly. I can tell you that from the get-go. Just leftist, full-blown trusting the government, trusting full-blown history. They don't even want to dabble in forbidden history, like the type of shit that I go and visit, like Redbird Stone and all that jazz, you know. Forbidden history, pretty much. They don't even want to touch it. I don't trust the historical societies. I don't trust Smithsonian either, man. They're just foul bastards. We learn of one Margaret Jones. Oh, here's another thing. You know why I don't trust them? They don't let poor people join. You have to be rich and like a Freemason or something like that to join. Especially, you see it a lot in these small towns, man. I bartended for this town that I live in for almost a decade. 8 years I bartended in this town. And every single member of the historical society is wealthy and a Freemason. And or part of something weird like that. There is 0 poor people. And I'm not boasting, but I'm pretty fucking smart when it comes to history. I've been to almost every historical battlefield around here. I've been to, I literally have thousands, if not thousands, of actual physical photographs of different battlefields I've visited, different historical sites I've visited. I have an entire room that is a library, but I guarantee you they would laugh at me if I tried to join a historical society. So, I don't know. Just saying. So, where were we at? The fucking Historical Society. Yeah, Virginia Historical Society. We learn of one Margaret Jones that At a court held at James City on the 12th of October, 1626, for ye several offences aforenamed of ye said Margaret Jones, yet she be touched or dragged at a boat strain in ye river. Damn, dragging her by boat. What? From ye shore unto the Margaret and John, and thence unto a shore again. So dragging her by a boat. Okay. Tuft would seem a truly appropriate word for this ordeal. The provost marshals decreed by this court at this time were 10 shillings for punishing any man by ducking. Sorry, I got the hiccups. In 1634, 2 women were sentenced to be either drawn from King's Creek from one cowpen to another at the starn of a boat or a canoe. So yeah, they're dragging women by boats at this point, by ropes too. So, or to present themselves before the congregation and ask public forgiveness of each other and God. In 1633, it was ordered that a ducking stool be built in every county in Maryland, but I have no proof that they were ever built or used. So that's probably good. Well, that's not probably good. That's good. Though it is probable they were. Well, damn. At a court baron at St. Clement's, the county was prosecuted for not having one of these public conveniences. So they're at a court baron. Yeah, the county was prosecuted for not having these torture devices put up. Wow. And you guys think Trump is Hitler. That's what cracks me up. And if you actually start reading history books, we got it pretty good, motherfuckers. Half a century elapsed after the settlement of Massachusetts ere that the Commonwealth ordered a ducking stool on the 15th of May, 1672. While Richard Bellingham was governor, the court at Massachusetts Bay passed this law. Whereas there is no express punishment by any law hitherto established affixed to evil practice of sundry persons by exorbitancy of the tongue in relaying scolding. It is therefore ordered that all persons convicted before any court or magistrate that hath proper cognizance of the cause rallying or scolding shall be gagged or set in a ducking stool and dipped over head and ears 3 times in some convenient place of fresh or salt water as court or magistrate judge shall meet. Governor Bellingham's sister was a notorious scold who suffered death as a witch. John Dunton, writing from Boston in 1686, does not note the presence of a ducking stool, but says, "Scolds they gag and set them at their own doors for certain hours together for all corners and goers that gaze at. Where this is a law in England and well executed, it would be little time prove an effectual remedy to cure the noise that is in any women's head." You guys think we're sexist now? You ain't seen shit. This was a law well executed at the time in Scotland, though Dunton was ignorant of it all. There are no entries to show that the law authorizing ducking was executed in Massachusetts nor in Maine, where a dozen towns, Kittery, York, and others, were fined for having no cucking stool. It was ordered on Long Island that every court of session should have a ducking stool, but nothing exists in their records to prove that the order was ever executed or any Long Island woman ducked. Nor is there proof that there was in New York City a ducking stool. Though orders were issued for one, a Lutheran minister of that city excused himself for striking a woman who angered him by her scolding. That's how it's spelled, scolding. I'm not just doing an accent. Because she was not punished by the law, therefore. Pennsylvania mild with the these and thous of non-belligerent Quakers did not escape scolding women. In 1708, the Common Council of Philadelphia ordered a ducking school to be built. In 1718, it was still lacking and still desired and still necessary. Whereas it has been frequently and often presented by several former grand juries for the city of necessity of a ducking school and a house of correction for the just punishment of scolding drunken women, as well as divers other prolificate and unruly person in this town who are become a public nuisance and a disturbance to a town in general. Therefore we the present grand jury do earnestly again present the same to the court of quarter sessions for the city, desiring the immediate care that these public conveniences may not be longer delayed, but with all possible speed provided for the detention and quieting such disorderly persons. For several years later, the magistrates clamored for a ducking school, and the following indictment was brought against an unruly woman. City of Philadelphia, we, the grand inquest of our Lord the King, upon respective oaths and affirmations, do present that Mary, wife of John Austin, late of Philadelphia, cordwainer, the 29th day of September, and divers endeavors other in times, as we before, as after in the high city ward, and the city affords within the jurisdiction of the court, was and yet is common scold, and the peace of our Lord the King a common and public disturber, and strife and debate among her neighbors, a common sower and mover, to the great disturbances of the liege subjects of our said Lord the King inhabiting the city affords, and to evil example of other such cases and delinquents, and also agat the peace of our Lord the King, his crown and dignity. As late as 1824, a Philadelphia scold was sentenced by the same court of sessions to be ducked, but the punishment was not inflicted, as it was deemed obsolete and contrary to the spirit of the time. In 1777, a ducking stool was ordered at the confluence of the Ohio and Monongahela rivers, and doubtless it was erected and used. In the year 1811, at the Supreme Court at Milledgeville, Georgia, one Miss Palmer, who the account says seems to have been rather glib on the tongue, was indicted, tried, convicted, and punished for scolding by being publicly ducked into the Oconee River. The editor adds, numerous spectators attended the execution of the sentence. 8 years later, the grand jury of Burke County and the same state presented Mary Camel as a common scold and disturber of the peaceable inhabitants of the county. The Augusta Chronicle says this of the indictment: we do not know the penalty, or if there be any, attached to the offense of scolding, but for the information of our Burke neighbors, we would inform them that the late lamented and distinguished Judge Early decided some years since, when a modern Zontip were brought before him, that she should undergo the punishment of lustration by an immersion 3 several times in the Oconee. Accordingly, she was confined of a tail of a cart, and accompanied by a hooting mob, conducted to the river, where she was publicly ducked in conformity with the sentence of the court. Should this punishment be accorded by Mary Camel, we hope, however, it may be attended with a more salutary effect than in the case we have just alluded to, the unruly subject of which, each time as she rose from the watery element, impiously exclaimed, with a ludicrous gravity of countenance, "Glory to God!" It is doubtful whether these Georgia duckings were done in a regular constructed ducking stool. The cart was probably run down into the water. One of the latest and certainly the most notorious sentences to ducking was that of Miss Anne Royal of Washington, D.C., almost in our own day. The extraordinarily woman had lived through an eventful career in love and adventure. She had been stolen by the Indians when a child and kept them 15 years. There you go. I was talking about how Native Americans, they don't like to talk about their negative history. They only like to talk about white man's negative history. But sorry, there was wrong on both sides. And this is someone who has both sides running through his veins. Both sides did shitty. Get over it. But yeah, she was kidnapped as a baby by Native Americans and held for 15 years hostage. God knows what they did to her in those 15 years. Then she was married to Captain Royal and taught to read and write. She traveled much and wrote several I can't even pronounce that, amusing books. She wrote books. She settled down upon Washington society as editor of a newspaper called the Washington Paul Pry, and of another, the Huntress, and she soon terrorized the place. No one in public office was spared, either in personal or printed abuse, and any offense or neglect was given to her. A persistent lobbyist, she was shunned like the plague by all congressmen. John Quincy Adams called her an interrogant virago. She was arraigned as a common scold before Judge William Cranch, and he sentenced her to be ducked in the Potomac River. She was, however, released with a fine and appears as today to have been insane, probably through over-humored temper. There you go, guys. That's the ducking stool. I gotta pee really bad, so I'll let y'all go. Love y'all.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.